Welcome to the Living Life Well show, the intersection of God's Word, today's science, and healthy living with common sense application, all based on the truth of the Word of God. I'm your host, Dr. John Skelton. Now let's get straight to the truth. All right, welcome back to the Living Life Well show. So today I wanted to talk about measles and potentially things that you can do for the unvaccinated or under-vaccinated, if you will, and approaches that we can take in general to help us anytime there are viruses like this that are going around in our communities, whether it's at home or abroad, any other place that's happening, these can apply. So we know that recently, just here close to Lubbock, where I live and practice, unfortunately, there was a measles outbreak in a community not far from here, with about 25% of those people that have been affected needing to be hospitalized, and unfortunately, one death due to a pediatric patient. So measles is very sinister, much like other viruses that we've recently seen. So much like COVID, we know that measles is airborne. It's airborne and it will stick around in a room that a person infected with measles has been in for at least a couple of hours after they've left. So somebody just walking into that room or anything else could potentially interact with that virus. And then if they are unvaccinated or undervaccinated, they could potentially contract measles. So now measles has been around forever. We essentially thought that we had eradicated it around the year 2000 with the MMR vaccine. Prior to that, we had just a measles vaccine in and of itself in the early 60s, but then they developed the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, which is the MMR in the MMR vaccine. And so that has been used now since essentially the 70s. There may be some areas where you can find the single measles vaccine. However, it is not readily available. What can we do if we are unvaccinated, undervaccinated, meaning only a single dose, and what do we really need to be looking for? Well, unfortunately, measles is one of those viruses that when you're infected with it, you've been exposed probably about a week before. If you remember back to the COVID pandemic, they kind of were telling us the same thing. It's that the same issue is that your distance between exposure to symptoms with measles can be a week or more, similar to what COVID was, about 3 to 5 days to a week or so prior to actually having symptoms. Well, with many of these types of viruses, you're shedding that virus well ahead of any type of symptoms. And so you may not even have the sniffles. You may feel just fine, but you are shedding that virus. Once you start having the symptoms, once you start having the cough, the congestion, the fever, the runny nose, all those things that go along with measles, you have been exposing others to that for quite some time. So that's what makes these type of viruses so difficult to really get under control and to deal with. And so that's why having that trail of where they've been, who potentially has been exposed, is so important. And so when we look at measles or any virus, and this applies to virtually any virus, there are things that we can do to really help support our immune system, actions that we can take to really help. So what are those? Well, number one is make sure that you have really good vitamin D levels. Vitamin D is going to be a great preventative to fight off any foreign invader, specifically viral foreign invaders that would come in. So whether that's the cold virus, a simple rhinovirus, whether that's COVID, whether that's the measles, or any other virus, maintaining and having adequate vitamin D levels are going to be very important. And so when we look at vitamin D levels and we look at the standard range of vitamin D, it's 30 to 100. Well, that's just simply not enough. Now, it is enough to keep you out of vitamin D deficiency on the low end, but it is not enough for health optimization. And that's what we need to be able to fight off these viruses. Now, we're getting into spring now where people are going to tend to be outside more and tend to get more vitamin D the way God intended from natural sunlight. However, most of us still need vitamin D. And vitamin D can be tested for very easily, and you can determine whether you need some vitamin D. The level should be between 50 to 90 nanograms per milliliter. And this is going to tell us if you're in that range, there is a very good chance that you will be able to fight off these foreign invaders, these viruses that are coming in to your body. In addition, when you do find that you have low vitamin D, you do want to take a supplement that also contains vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 makes sure that it gets delivered throughout your body and doesn't get stuck in one system or the other, particularly the cardiovascular system. That is delivered through all organ systems within your body to provide that immune activation, that hormone synthesis, that cholesterol synthesis, and all of the different factors that are dependent upon vitamin D. In addition, they make a supplement that has vitamin A, D, and K2. As many of you may have been looking, what can we do for treatments for measles and those things, you've seen that vitamin A can be a treatment as well. Well, vitamin A is great and we use it and need it for many different processes in our body, specifically thyroid, but it specifically can help with someone who has severe measles. Now, there's a little bit of controversy as to whether it actually really helps prevent measles contraction or not. In addition, vitamin A can be dangerous. It can cause issues with liver enzymes and cause problems there when it gets to high or toxic levels. In my practice, if someone typically has thyroid dysfunction, we'll usually use the vitamin A, D, K. If not, then we'll use the vitamin D just with K2. Now, when you're talking about measles and you're talking about potentially children and or adults, you can get vitamin A pretty well from lots of different sources. From animal sources would be liver, fish oils. You may have heard of cod liver oil recently in the news. You can also find it in eggs and dairy products. But then in plant sources, of course, carrots. That's where we see the beta carotene, and then also sweet potatoes, spinach, kale, and orange or green vegetables typically are going to have this readily available to help support vitamin A levels. Now, when you're talking about children, is really kind of getting them to increase that dietary intake of vitamin A as opposed to putting them on a specific supplement. And the reason is because it can become toxic. It can get toxic to children, and then it can cause severe issues with liver damage and even cause bone pain. And if a lady is pregnant while they're taking it, it can even cause negative effects of the pregnancy. Typically with vitamin A excess, you're going to see things like nausea, vomiting, headaches, dizziness, these kinds of things. Now, some places in the world have used vitamin A prophylactically for measles. Now, these are going to be areas in which we're going to see really malnourished children and this type of situation. Now, in our country, we're definitely not malnourished, but we do have issues with vitamin levels. Now, I still do not recommend that you routinely supplement vitamin A or vitamin D to a child unless you have checked those levels. So you can go and get your levels checked through your primary care physician, or potentially if you have something like any lab test now, you could go there, request a vitamin D level and the vitamin A levels as well. And so you could look and see where you are in that range. So, when looking at vitamin A levels in children, you want to be at least 20, but don't want to exceed 60. You could look at it that way. You could have your child increase their daily dietary intake for a couple of weeks and then have this level checked. I would also recommend checking the vitamin D level as well. And then you can make decisions based on that. So, to help you and your children stay healthy during this measles outbreak, especially if you were unvaccinated or undervaccinated, meaning less than 2 doses of measles vaccine, which one dose confers about immunity in 93% of the cases. So one dose is usually very good if you've already had that. But if you are concerned about that, making sure that you're getting plenty of vitamin D, when is the best time with regards to sunlight to do that? It's going to be at the first 45 minutes of the day of sunlight and the last 45 minutes of the day. We're having some longer days now, starting this weekend with springing forward. So that may be something to consider. Just extra daylight exposure in general is going to help. And so looking at the natural ways to get that vitamin D up, get that vitamin A in is going to be important. And that would be what my suggestion would be, is to always really look at what you can do naturally first, as opposed to looking to any supplements or any things like that. Now, if you are taking a supplement, kind of what is the level that we want to look at? For men, if you're looking at vitamin A, you're talking about 900 micrograms per day. Women, about 700 micrograms. Same thing during pregnancy. Could be a little bit more when you're talking about lactation. And this is specifically related to the retinol activity that is in each vitamin A supplement. So you'd really want to pay attention to that. Now, other things that we can do. Really, we need to make sure that we're getting plenty of sleep, plenty of good hydration. Make sure that we're supporting a healthy immune system by eliminating those added sugars, those things that we know are inflammatory, specifically when you're talking about kids and what kids tend to want to consume would be sugary drinks. That would be the thing that I would primarily eliminate from kids, be it artificial sugars or just regular table sugar. Cokes, sports drinks, things like that are going to be the main thing to eliminate. Depending upon the milk that you're using, it could have some added sugar in it as well. And so limiting those sugar cereals in the morning are going to be important to help decrease that inflammation, help to boost that immune system, and make sure that you're going to get the most benefit out of everything that you're doing health-wise to help prevent measles or any other virus that may come into our community. So I hope this has been beneficial. I hope this has been informative. Thanks and God bless. That's it for this episode of the Living Life Well show. If you like what you've heard and want to learn more, or want to know how to put this into practice for yourself, go to livelifewellclinic.com. Until next time, this is Dr. John Skelton saying go out and live the truth so you can live life well. The preceding is for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is not meant to be used to prevent, diagnose, treat, or cure any condition. The information contained in this show does not substitute the need for a qualified medical professional, nor is it meant to provide medical advice or services. If you feel information presented in this show may apply to you, we recommend you seek out the help of a qualified medical professional who can evaluate and treat your specific concerns.